In October 2019, while repairing the foundations of their home on the cattle ranch in Nuevo León, the Hernandez family made a discovery that would change everything we thought we knew about the Convent of Santa Clara. What they found, buried 3 meters underground, revealed that the mysterious disappearance of the 43 Poor Clare nuns in 1750 was only the beginning of something far more sinister. For nearly 200 years, this secret had remained hidden, protected by the silence of a man who carried the most terrible truth with him to his grave. But buried secrets always find their way back to the surface. And what Ignacio Mendoza never dared to reveal in his writings was about to come to light. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about the investigation of 1823 and make you question whether the mystery of the cursed convent was ever truly resolved. To understand the magnitude of this discovery, we must revisit the events that marked this place forever. In August of 1750, 43 nuns of the Convent of Santa Clara of Assisi vanished without a trace in a single night. For 73 years, the mystery remained unsolved until, in 1823, the historian Ignacio Mendoza gained access to the sealed convent. There, he discovered an underground chamber where the souls of the nuns had been trapped after a ritual went terribly wrong. According to Mendoza's official records, he had managed to free the nuns and permanently seal the ancestral entity that had manipulated them. The convent was demolished, the land declared purified, and in 1847, the Hernandez family established their prosperous cattle ranch on the site. For 5 generations, they lived in complete peace, never experiencing anything strange. Roberto Hernandez, a 52-year-old civil engineer, inherited the ranch from his father in 2010. A pragmatic and skeptical man, he never paid attention to the old local legends about the convent. His wife, Carmen, was an elementary school teacher, and their 2 teenage children, Miguel and Sofia, studied in Monterrey. They were a perfectly normal family who had transformed the old land into a shining example of modern rural prosperity. In October 2019, Roberto decided to expand the main house to create a larger living room. During the excavations to reinforce the foundations, the workers uncovered something unexpected. A perfectly preserved stone vault, sealed with a bronze plate engraved with a strange symbol and a Latin inscription. Hic iacet veritas sepulta, here lies the truth, buried. The family had lived there for more than a century without ever suspecting that beneath their home lay the most important secret chamber of Mendoza's investigation. His hidden personal archive, where he kept the documents he considered too dangerous to reveal to the world. On October 15, 2019, precisely on the anniversary of Mendoza's original discovery in 1823, Roberto Hernandez opened the sealed vault. What he found inside shattered everything he believed about his land's history and about human nature itself. The chamber contained a wrought iron chest with 3 separate compartments. In the first, there was a personal diary of Ignacio Mendoza covering the years after 1823, written in handwriting that grew increasingly shaky and erratic. The first pages revealed a terrifying truth. The first pages of the diary revealed a terrifying truth. Mendoza had not truly managed to free the nuns, nor had he permanently sealed the entity. In his private notes, he confessed, "I lied to the world and to myself. The ritual of liberation partially failed. I managed to draw the souls out of the confinement circle, but I could not send them to eternal rest. Instead, I transferred them into a state of limbo, suspended between life and death, aware yet incapable of communication. The entity remains sealed, but it feeds slowly on their prolonged suffering." The second compartment contained detailed maps of an underground tunnel network that extended far beyond what Mendoza had ever revealed publicly. The blueprints showed that the convent had been built over a natural cave system that indigenous peoples had considered sacred long before the arrival of the Spanish. The entity was not a Christian demon, but something much older, a pre-Columbian deity of the underworld, once feared and worshipped for millennia by civilizations that inhabited the region. But it was the third compartment that truly horrified Roberto. Inside were 43 small glass vials, each labeled with the name of a nun. Within every vial pulsed a faintly glowing substance, beating weakly like a dying heart. Alongside them lay Mendoza's final note, revealing the most terrible truth. "I could not free them, for I found no way to do so without fully awakening the entity. I chose the lesser evil, to keep them conscious, yet contained, eternally feeding the seals of the prison. May God forgive me for condemning them to infinite suffering in the name of a greater good. The note concluded with a chilling warning. If anyone finds this archive, know this: the souls can indeed be freed, but doing so will awaken the entity completely. I have spent my final years searching for another solution, but none exists. I leave the decision to future generations, to keep 43 souls in eternal torment, or to release an ancient evil that could consume the world. Roberto read the diary with trembling hands as the afternoon light faded. When he finished, he noticed that the vials had begun to glow more intensely, as if the mere act of opening the vault had alerted the trapped souls that someone finally knew their true fate. That night, for the first time in the history of the ranch, the Hernandez family experienced supernatural phenomena. Whispering voices in the walls, footsteps in the empty attic, and an icy presence moving through the halls. The 43 nuns had awakened from their lethargy, and now they wanted to be heard. The days following the discovery completely transformed the life of the Hernandez family. Roberto, who had been a skeptic all his life, was now forced to face a reality that defied all logic. His wife, Carmen, initially incredulous, began to experience vivid dreams where 43 women dressed in white begged her to help them find peace. The strange phenomena at the ranch grew stronger with each passing day. The animals began behaving erratically. The cows refused to approach a certain part of the land. The horses neighed in panic through the night, and the dogs barked endlessly at the basement, where Roberto had temporarily stored the vials. Miguel and Sofia, the teenage children, were the first to establish direct communication with the entities. One November night, while studying in their rooms, they began hearing voices speaking to them in archaic 17th century Spanish. The voices were not threatening. On the contrary, they carried profound sadness and a desperate plea for release. Sor Magdalena de la Cruz, the former Mother Superior, became the primary voice of communication. Through sessions that the family reluctantly began to hold, Sor Magdalena explained the horrors of their existence during the last 200 years. We have been aware every second of these centuries, feeling the passage of time as eternal torture. We watch the world change around us, but we cannot touch it. We cannot rest. We cannot truly die. We are prisoners of our own search for the divine. Roberto consulted historians, archaeologists, and finally experts in paranormal phenomena. Most dismissed his story as the product of stress. But Dr. Elena Martinez, an anthropologist specializing in pre-Columbian religions at the University of Monterrey, took the case seriously. After examining Mendoza's documents and the artifacts, she confirmed that the symbols on the vault corresponded to rituals from the Huastec culture, specifically those related to Mictlantecutli, the lord of the underworld. What you describe, Dr. Martinez told Roberto, suggests that the convent was built over a Huastec sacred site where rituals of communication with the dead were performed. The entity the nuns contacted was neither Christian nor demonic in the European sense. It was an ancestral Mexican deity, one that had been revered and contained for centuries through specific rituals. When the nuns disrupted these practices with their own religious rites, they shattered a balance that had lasted for millennia. Meanwhile, manifestations at the ranch became increasingly intense. The nuns began showing the family visions of the past, the exact moment of their transformation in 1750, the years of silent agony, and, most disturbing of all, images of the entity itself, growing in strength with every year, feeding slowly on their suffering. And then, the most terrifying truth revealed itself. Mendoza had not sealed the entity out of compassion for the world, but because he discovered that to release it completely would require the voluntary sacrifice of the very souls that fed it. In other words, the nuns themselves had to consciously choose total destruction to free the entity, or remain in eternal torment to keep it asleep. During these months of communication, Roberto discovered something that Mendoza had never considered. There existed a third option. It required finding direct descendants of the original nuns who would be willing to complete a specific ritual of liberation. And it was no coincidence that the archive had been uncovered precisely in 2019. The souls had been subtly influencing events so that the right family would find the truth at the right time. In March 2020, while the world faced the pandemic lockdown, Roberto Hernandez made a discovery that completely changed his understanding of the mystery. While reviewing the family's genealogical documents to understand why they had been chosen to uncover the archive, he stumbled upon a terrifying connection. His wife, Carmen, was a direct descendant of Sor Carmen de los Angeles, one of the vanished nuns. This revelation came through extensive research in the parish archives of Monterrey. Carmen's maiden name, Villarreal, directly connected her to the family of the convent's founder, Don Sebastián de Villarreal. More specifically, she was the great-great-granddaughter of Sor Carmen de los Angeles' brother, who had survived and had descendants before his sister took the veil. The night Roberto shared this information with his wife, the manifestations in the ranch reached an intensity never seen before. The 43 vials began to glow simultaneously with a blinding light, and for the first time in 2 centuries, the voices of all the nuns were heard together, forming a ghostly choir that echoed throughout the property. Then Sor Carmen de los Angeles appeared physically before her descendant, materializing as a translucent yet clearly visible figure in the main hall of the house. "Carmen, daughter of my blood," she said in a voice that seemed to come from far beyond. "We have waited for centuries for someone of our family to return to this place. Only the blood of the original lineage can break the chains Mendoza forged in his ignorance." The ancestral nun explained that the ritual of liberation did not require human sacrifice, but something much more subtle. Someone connected by blood to the original victims had to be willing to temporarily take their place in limbo, allowing the trapped souls to pass through them into eternal rest. The process would last exactly 24 hours, during which Carmen would experience the accumulated suffering of 200 years. But she would survive in the end. The danger, warned Sor Carmen de los Angeles, was that during those 24 hours, while the souls passed through her toward freedom, the entity would fully awaken. Carmen would have to resist not only the unbearable pain but also its attempts to possess her. If she failed, she would not only die, she would unleash an evil capable of consuming the world. Carmen listened to the proposal with a mix of terror and compassion. The idea of enduring 2 centuries of torment compressed into one day was horrifying. Yet the thought of condemning 43 souls to eternal suffering was just as unbearable. Roberto, terrified, opposed her decision outright. "I will not let you risk your life for something that happened centuries ago. There has to be another way." But Carmen had already made her choice. "Roberto, I am a teacher. My whole life I've dedicated myself to caring for others. If there is even the slightest chance of freeing these women, I have to try." When Dr. Elena Martinez was consulted about the proposed ritual, she confirmed that there were indeed precedents in Huastec tradition for temporary substitution sacrifices, in which a living person voluntarily took the place of trapped spirits to facilitate their release. "It is extraordinarily dangerous," she warned, "but theoretically possible. The key lies in the mental and spiritual strength of the person performing the substitution." On August 15, 2020, exactly 270 years after the original disappearance, Carmen Hernandez prepared for the most dangerous ritual of her life. She did not know if she would ever see another sunrise, but she was determined to free the souls that had waited for her help for centuries. The preparation required weeks of exhaustive research. Dr. Elena Martinez worked side by side with Roberto to reconstruct the exact process, drawing on fragments of Huastec texts and Mendoza's hidden notes. They discovered that the ritual had to be carried out in the precise spot where the convent's original altar once stood, using a configuration of elements that blended Christian and pre-Columbian traditions. Carmen began a mental and spiritual preparation process: partial fasting, deep meditation, and the study of prayers in both Latin and Nahuatl. At night, the nuns guided her through sessions where they gradually shared pieces of their experience, preparing her mind for the ordeal she was about to face. But as Carmen prepared, the entity began to awaken. Ranch workers reported seeing shadows moving in broad daylight, temperatures plummeting suddenly in certain areas, and a constant sound like sighs emerging from the ground. The animals grew more restless with each passing day. Several cows died inexplicably, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. As the night of the ritual drew closer, the paranormal activity reached extreme levels. On August 14th, the temperature inside the Hernandez home dropped to just 5 degrees Celsius despite the blazing Mexican summer heat. The vials pulsed so brightly, they projected dancing shadows onto the walls, creating figures that seemed to write themselves in an unknown language. Miguel and Sofia both had simultaneous visions. They saw their mother surrounded by darkness that swallowed her completely. "Mama," Sofia said, crying, "in my dream you don't come back. And if something goes wrong?" Carmen embraced her children, trying to hide her own fear. "Sometimes we must risk everything to do what is right," she told them. "If I don't come back, I want you to know that I love you more than my own life. But I couldn't go on living knowing I left 43 souls in torment when I had the chance to help them." The ritual's configuration required Carmen to stand at the center of a circle formed by the 43 vials, each placed in specific positions that corresponded to pre-Columbian constellations. Dr. Martinez had calculated that the stellar alignment on August 15, 2020, would be identical to that of 1750, creating the energetic conditions necessary for the transfer. Roberto installed cameras to document the process, though he knew they would likely fail to capture the most important aspects of what was about to happen. He also prepared a basic medical kit and kept direct contact with a hospital in Monterrey, knowing Carmen might suffer severe physical damage during the experience. But just when everything seemed ready, something happened that nobody expected. At 11:47 p.m. on August 14th, 1 hour and 13 minutes before the scheduled ritual, Sor Magdalena de la Cruz appeared physically before the entire family. But her appearance had changed drastically. No longer was she the serene, translucent figure they had come to know. She now appeared tormented, her face marked by centuries of suffering, her eyes reflecting a desperation that chilled the soul. "Something has changed," she said in a voice that sounded like the wind through graves. "The entity has grown far stronger than we calculated. It has been feeding not only on our suffering, but on the energy of all who have died in this region over the past 200 years. It is more powerful now than it was in 1750. The revelation was horrifying. The entity had been using the souls of the nuns as antennas, absorbing the energy of death from the entire Sierra Madre Oriental. Every natural death, every accident, every tragedy within hundreds of kilometers had fed its power. If you attempt the ritual now," Sor Magdalena continued, "you will not only endure our pain, the entity will try to use your body as its vessel to manifest in this world. And with the strength it has accumulated, it may succeed." Roberto grasped his wife's hand. "Carmen, you don't have to do this. We'll find another way." But Carmen's decision was final. "If I don't try now, these women will suffer another 200 years, and the entity will only grow stronger. It's now or never." At 12:47 a.m. on August 15th, 2020, Carmen Hernandez stood at the center of the circle, surrounded by the 43 vials pulsing like dying hearts. The air grew thick, almost solid, and an ancient, malevolent presence began to stir in the depths of the earth. The most dangerous ritual in the ranch's history was about to begin, and no one knew if Carmen would emerge as the heroine who freed the lost souls, or the victim who unleashed an ancestral evil upon the world. At 12:59 a.m. on August 15th, 2020, Carmen Hernandez closed her eyes and spoke the words in Nahuatl that Dr. Martinez had taught her. "Here I accept the divine suffering." The very moment the words left her lips, all 43 vials shattered simultaneously in a blinding flash of light that turned night into day. What followed was indescribable. Carmen felt as if 43 souls rushed through her body like a torrent of pure pain. It wasn't just emotional suffering, it was the physical experience of 200 years of conscious existence without a body. The frustration of watching the world change but never being able to touch it. The despair of unanswered prayers. The constant terror of feeling the entity feeding on their agony. Her body convulsed violently as the memories of the nuns flooded her. She saw their lives before the convent, their hopes of finding God, the terrible moment of their transformation, and decade after decade of silent torment. Roberto recorded everything, capturing something that defied any scientific explanation. Carmen's body flickered in and out of translucence, and through her form, the figures of the 43 nuns could be seen, each waiting her turn to pass through toward freedom. But after 30 minutes, the entity awoke fully. The temperature plummeted to Arctic levels, and a massive, invisible presence began moving beneath the earth. Carmen screamed with a voice that was not her own. "I will not let them go. They are mine, by right of conquest." The voice that came from her throat spoke in archaic Nahuatl. Dr. Martinez, monitoring the ritual through videoconference, translated with horror. "It is Mictlantecutli, but not as the Aztecs knew him. It has evolved. It has fed on Christian suffering for centuries. It has become something hybrid, something that should not exist." Roberto watched as his wife fought against possession. One part of her clung to control, allowing the souls to pass into liberation, while the other part was being consumed by the entity, which was trying to use her body as a gateway into the physical world. One by one, the nuns began to manifest visibly in the room, no longer translucent figures, but beings of pure light. Each approached Carmen, touched her gently, and vanished in a burst of luminous peace. With each soul freed, Carmen screamed in agony, yet also in relief, as though she were giving birth to their long-awaited freedom. Finally, Sor Carmen de los Angeles approached her descendant. "Thank you, daughter of my blood," she whispered. "You have broken chains we thought eternal." When she touched Carmen, the experience was different. Instead of pain, Carmen felt a love so pure and overwhelming it nearly destroyed her. A love accumulated over 2 centuries, finally able to be expressed in gratitude. But as the last nun disappeared, the entity made its final move. Without the souls that had contained it, it attempted to seize Carmen completely, to manifest in the world of the living. Roberto watched in terror as his wife's eyes turned completely black, her body shifting into something no longer human. And in that critical moment, something no one expected happened. The 43 nuns, already freed, returned voluntarily as a shield of pure light, surrounding Carmen. They were no longer prisoners. This time, they had chosen to come back, if only for an instant, to protect the one who had saved them. "You will not touch her," they cried in unison, their voices shaking the very foundations of the ranch. "She gave us the freedom you denied us for centuries." A battle of light and darkness erupted. Golden and black rays of energy clashed in the air around Carmen as she fought to hold onto her consciousness at the heart of the supernatural storm. For exactly 7 minutes, the fight raged. And then, in a moment of absolute clarity, Carmen found her own voice and shouted in Spanish, "You do not belong to this time. Return to the depths where oblivion awaits you." The combination of her will, the protection of the freed nuns, and the power of words in a language the entity did not fully understand tore a rupture in its control. The entity released a scream that was felt more than heard, a sound that seemed to rise from the earth's very core. Slowly, its presence withdrew, not destroyed, but forced back into a deep sleep that would last millennia. The nuns faded one last time, but now in complete peace. Sor Magdalena de la Cruz was the final figure to vanish, smiling at Carmen with eternal gratitude. "God bless you, brave woman. You have ended a suffering we thought eternal." At dawn on August 15, 2020, after exactly 24 hours of ritual, Carmen collapsed. She remained unconscious for 3 days. When she awoke in the hospital of Monterrey, she remembered nothing of the final hours. Doctors could not explain how she had survived what they described as massive neurological trauma that should have been fatal. Roberto told his wife everything that had happened, showing her the recordings that documented the most extraordinary events ever captured on video. Carmen wept as she saw her ancestor, Sor Carmen de los Angeles, and realized she had succeeded in freeing the 43 souls who had suffered for centuries. Dr. Elena Martinez confirmed that all paranormal activity at the ranch had ceased entirely. Temperature readings showed the land had returned to normal. The animals resumed their natural behavior, and for the first time in 270 years, the place radiated an absolute sense of peace. the family decided to transform part of their property into a memorial for the 43 nuns. They built a small garden on the exact spot where the convent's altar once stood, placing a plaque inscribed with the names of all the sisters and the words, "Freed by the love of those who never forgot them." Carmen returned to her work as a teacher, but with a completely transformed perspective on life and death. Occasionally, on August nights, visitors to the memorial report seeing soft lights dancing over the flowers. But they are not lights of suffering, they are lights of eternal gratitude. Roberto published all the documentation, including the video recordings, on a website dedicated to the convent's history. The material has been studied by parapsychologists worldwide, though many traditional scholars dismiss it as elaborate fiction. In 2023, the family received a letter from Rome. After a thorough investigation, the Vatican officially declared that the 43 nuns of the Convent of Santa Clara had been released from prolonged suffering through a heroic act of Christian charity. Although the Church did not recognize the event as an official miracle, the letter acknowledged that forces beyond human understanding had been involved in their final liberation. The entity now lies dormant in the depths of the Sierra Madre Oriental, no longer feeding on human suffering. The seals that contain it are no longer artificial, but natural, maintained by the restored balance between Christian and pre-Columbian spiritual forces of the region. Carmen was left with only one reminder of her ordeal. Every year on August 15th, she can see, for just a moment, the 43 nuns smiling at her from the memorial garden. It is not a terrifying vision, but an annual reminder that true love can transcend centuries of suffering, and that some battles, even against ancestral forces, can be won by ordinary people willing to sacrifice themselves for others. Just when we think we've seen it all, the horror at the ranch in Nuevo León teaches us that some mysteries require generations to be fully resolved. If the story gave you chills and made you question the limits between life and death, share it with someone who loves the supernatural. Leave a like to support our content, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more tales like this one. The story of the Convent of Santa Clara reminds us that true love can transcend not only death, but centuries of torment. And it teaches us that the darkest secrets often take multiple generations to be revealed, and that sometimes the courage of a single ordinary person can change the fate of souls lost for centuries. What do you think of Carmen's decision? Would you have had the courage to risk your life to free the nuns? Do you believe this chapter is truly closed? Or might more secrets still lie buried beneath the earth of Nuevo León?